Alrighty. First of all, this feels weird not to have a mic in my hand, so someone told me I look like the next Justin Timberlake. I will go with that. So JT is here to introduce this amazing panel. We have Blair, Phil, and John. So maybe starting with Phil, give a little introduction about yourself and your history. And I know it's pretty amazing.
Phil Edholm. I guess I used the mic, couldn't I? Phil Edholm, currently run a organization called PKA Consulting. Previously, I was the VP of Technology Strategy and Innovation of Avaya. After Avaya bought Nortel, I was the CTO at Nortel through most of the aughts. If you know things like VoIP, I was actually one of the original creators of VoIP back in the 90s. Frost & Sullivan gave me a Lifetime Achievement Award for creating the VoIP industry. Currently focus on where we're going as an industry, what's changing, and quite frankly, the market you're in and how fundamentally it's going to change over the next few years.
Wonderful. John.
Tough act to follow. I play guitar and piano. That's all you got to know. Yeah, anyways, I'm John Arnold. I am in Toronto, so home of where basketball rules for a little bit anyways. But I'm an independent analyst, and I'm actually the only independent tech analyst in Canada. And I focus on technologies around communications and collaboration. Been doing it for about 15 years or so. And I think the time is right for where this company is going in terms of where the market has opportunity. And I thought Chris's presentation really said a lot of what we're going to talk about now. So kudos, Chris, for that. And I'm a longtime UMA user, by the way. That's another conversation. But I'll pass it on to Blair. So we're all independent analysts, and I guess we're all also wearing the hat of BC Strategies, and Blair can add on to that as well. And we'll blow you away in about 7 seconds.
Don't know about that, but so I'm Blair Pleasant. I'm president and principal analyst of Confusion. I'm an independent analyst based in Northern California in beautiful wine country. I'm also one of the co-founders of UC Strategies, which is now BC Strategies. So as the unified communications market kind of has been in transition, we felt that BC, or business communications, is a more encompassing term for it. So BC Strategies is made up of independent analysts and consultants, so the three of us are representatives. So please go to the website. We've got lots of information to help buyers on their journeys, and we write about what's going on and helping people to better understand the business communications market.
Perfect. All right. Well, why don't we give you guys a softball. Where do you see the future of UC headed, and what do you want to see it, or where do you want to see it go? So who wants to go first?
Sure.
Perfect.
So basically, and I think we all agree on this, where we see things going is everything is coming together. So we used to have a lot of silos. We had contact center, unified communications, messaging, collaboration, conferencing, all these things were separate. And now it's all coming together. AI is underpinning everything. So instead of having all these silos, we're seeing everything come together. So, if you're in a, if you're editing a document, let's say, and you want to collaborate with a team member, you just do, click to collaborate, click to communicate. And if you want to set up a video call, you can just, click on that. So everything is becoming more of a seamless, holistic type of experience. And we're not there yet, but that's kind of where we're headed and where a lot of things are going. And AI, as I mentioned, is definitely going to be underpinning all of this. And we're seeing AI mainly in the contact center right now, but it is starting to spread out more to collaboration, to meetings. As Chris mentioned, facial recognition, you go in and the system will recognize you. AI can be used to assign tasks to make sure that the right information is brought up. So if you're having a meeting with somebody, the information, documents that you need will be there, so you don't have to go searching for things. So it's really going to be helping things move a lot more smoothly, and things that we do manually right now are going to be automated. So that's where I see things for now anyway.
Absolutely. Now, you mentioned AI, and I'm already getting off script, so I apologize. I feel like a lot of companies keep on talking about AI and all their investments in AI. Have you seen anything come to fruition where it's like, hey, you can actually see it and touch it and feel it, and you can see it actually moving the lever, or do you feel like this is the future?
Yes.
All right, perfect.
So, no, to both. I mean, so in, yesterday, if you go on nojitter.com, yesterday I posted an article about chatbots and how they don't work. So we are seeing a lot of companies deploying chatbots, and frankly, they suck for the most part. So so I had this whole LinkedIn discussion where there were about 44 comments, so obviously I hit a nerve with it. So I think out of the 44 comments, maybe 3 people said, yeah, chatbots work, and everyone else said, no, it's awful. So there are a couple, so from the chatbot perspective, there are a couple of ways that we're seeing it work, but it's still very, very early days. What we are seeing work as far as AI is helping to automate some manual tasks. So AI in the back end. So not so much in the front end where it's presented to customers, but more in the back end where it might be, filling out forms or pulling up information and doing things kind of in the back. So we're not seeing it as much, but it is happening.
Absolutely. John or Phil, anything you guys want to add?
I'd like to, if you don't mind, Patrick, come back a bit to your opening question on where UC is going. And to build on what Blair was saying, I think you have to keep in mind for you guys who are out there really trying to sell these as solutions to the marketplace, right? I mean, we've heard it already this morning. A lot of your end customers are still basically telephony 101 people. So you see what companies like 2600 Hertz are really good at is making it all look like magic, right? That it just all flows seamlessly. You stay on one page, one interface, etc. You don't have to really go anywhere. That's the stickiness that you want to keep customers working. The thing is, we all talk about UC as a solution, as something that's real. Your customers don't think about UC, right? They think about applications that are easy to use. And as far as where it's going, I think the important thing is the value proposition. It's evolving from the heavy lifting of the technologies to make UC work. That's kind of like generation 1, and we're kind of past that now. And I think the value where businesses really look for and what you can be selling is focus not so much on making all the things work together seamlessly, but how does this enable you to process information better, improve workflows, get better business outcomes. When you have those kind of conversations, that resonates with the buyers. They don't really think or care about UC as a term. That's an abstract concept. But the outcomes is what really matters and gets them buying this stuff.
So first off, UC is absolutely the wrong moniker because we're not unifying. We're converging with other stuff. So this is an industry that for the past 20 years has been about convergence. Anybody been in the industry 20 years? What was the first convergence we had? Voicemail and email, unified messaging. What was the second convergence we had? Voice over IP. That was the convergence in the data network. Then we've seen the latest convergence is convergence with personal productivity. How many of you in this room are knowledge workers? Anybody in this room a knowledge worker? Anybody manage their own time, keep their own calendar, make their own decisions about what they do with their work life? You have your own personal business process, you're all knowledge workers. Only 15% of the global population are knowledge workers. 85% are not knowledge workers. They don't work the way you work. North America, 22% are knowledge workers. 78% of the workforce doesn't work the way you work. The next convergence is that workforce converging communication and collaboration into their work processes. The difference is it's not the informal personal process that you use. I guarantee you, probably the majority of you use Outlook, Exchange, Office 365. A few of you maybe use Google. That's how you manage your life. Converging in that is what we've been doing for the last 10 years. And that's what UC was all about. The real next future in this industry, and what I think is going to be transformational, is converging communications with everything else. Whether you want to call it communications, collaboration, that functionality, it's how it integrates with applications, it's what CPaaS is, it's all those other things. And the reason it's really important, and this is a really critical thought process, the only value in UC for knowledge workers, what's the only thing from a business perspective it does? Only one thing. No, doesn't ever manage accountability. Productivity. It increases productivity, it cuts costs. 22% of the workforce, if you can cut their costs by 5%, you have a value. On the other side, if you can automate processes in business and eliminate churn, reduce business process time, increase revenue, it has a much bigger impact on business. I think the next area of convergence, bringing UC into that non-knowledge worker is going to be the big transformation that's coming. And that's where the real opportunity is, where there's going to be revenue to be made because you can get outside of that productivity envelope.
Well, that is...
We're done?
We're done. All right. Thank you very much. That's amazing. To kind of go upon that, who do you guys see that's actually going that direction then? Who's actually, everybody's talking about, hey, we are going with the AI, we are going, to make people more productive. But do you actually feel like anybody's actually hitting stride yet? Or is that, we're talking 30 days, months, years, like when is this going to actually be happening?
So I think the question, you kind of confused when it brought in different things. I mean, clearly, the one big change so far has been CPaaS. I mean, if you look at CPaaS, the business case becomes really simple. And the easy way to understand CPaaS is the dentist's office, right? Everybody go to the dentist? Anybody not go to the dentist? What is the probability you will actually make a dentist appointment in 6 months when it's given to you, that card's given to you after your cleaning? If you are not reminded you have an appointment, what's the probability you will show up on that day for your next cleaning?
Zero.
It's about 50 to 60%. About 40 to 50% of people will naturally miss it for a whole bunch of reasons. So if you're a dentist and you got 3 cleaning chairs and you got 3 cleaning technicians and you book 3 people in, you have an absolute probability that 1/3 of your capacity will never be utilized. But you can't overbook like airlines, right? Imagine if you went to your dentist's office and you said, I'm here for my cleaning. They said, oh, we don't have an extra seat for you. You're going to have to come back later. What would your reaction be to that dentist's office? So adding CPaaS in decreases the missed appointments from 40% down to about 5%. Essentially, you recapture the utilization capacity of that 3rd chair. It's a really simple business case. Has nothing, it's not based on communications per se, it's a business case. And that's when you start seeing those changes in industries, you're going to see major changes. AI, by the way, AI again is an interesting, there is no artificial intelligence whatsoever. All there is machine learning and predictability. Machine learning predicts outcomes based on a set of data points that it describes in the information. That's all this is. The problem is to do AI or machine learning right, you have to have clean data and understand what you're looking for. There's some pretty amazing stuff there. By the way, if you haven't seen, go look at VoiceSense. They actually claim they can predict with 60 to 90 seconds of speech the probability that you will default on a loan based on how you talk. That's a pretty scary concept. So there's some pretty amazing stuff happening.
Oh, John or Blair, anything?
Okay. Well, your comment about where you see, I guess, leaders coming or things changing. Earlier slide had that kind of wall of logos of all the familiar faces we know. The thing I want to say is it's not going to come from the usual suspects, the disruption, okay? The AI stuff is really coming from, I hate to say it, but the Googles and the Amazons of the world, because they have the cloud infrastructure that you need to economically build up the data sets that you need to have AI applications that work. When we talk about messaging, it's guys like Twilio. When we talk about workstream collaboration, it's guys like Slack. Companies that we weren't talking about 2 or 3 or 4 years ago, but now they are leading the way and really presenting big threats to the Ciscos, Avayas, Microsofts. Everyone is chasing what these guys are doing. So if your comfort level is the Mitels and Avayas of the world, etc., they will do a good job for you, but you're looking at a very small subset of where the really cool innovation is. And this is my first time here, and yours too, and I guess yours too, Phil?
I was here before.
Okay. A lot of developers here, right? You guys live and breathe this stuff. So you know what these companies are doing. So you understand the kind of technologies that they're bringing to the table. And it's very different stuff from just creating dial tone cheaper. It's a very different environment today. So you guys are in a really great spot because you natively understand a lot of this stuff. And the sky's the limit. That's the cool thing about the APIs. And that's where I think the value is going to be, is like Phil says, the more you can customize applications, it's just simple stuff, notifications, reminders. Boy, that makes a world of difference to your customers.
And a lot of it really is about communication enabling the applications. And this is something we've been talking about for a really long time. And that's something that CPaaS can do and what CPaaS is really, really strong at. So I think we all vehemently agree that it's not going to be about selling dial tone, selling phones. It really is about those applications and what you can do to tie communications into those applications. But I think the issue is we in this room understand that, but your customers don't, and they don't understand what's the value and how they can use it. So Phil talked about the dentist office, and I actually did a panel at Enterprise Connect about 2 years ago. I was so tired of every time I would talk to a CPaaS vendor and I would say, tell me about use cases, and they would always say, well, when you go to the dentist office, it's like, okay, give me something else. So we actually had a session on applications other than dentist office. So of course it was all the Uber types of applications, but the idea is that your customers don't really understand the value of CPaaS and how to use it. So it's up to all of us to really come up with those use cases to help them understand. So if you can come up with a couple in their vertical industry, so they're like, oh, okay, so this is how I can use it to help my customers' to improve productivity, whatever it is. That's what's really important, and that's what's really missing in the industry right now. So I really encourage you to, when you're up in the middle of the night and you can't fall back asleep, try to think of what are some good use cases that will help your customers understand how they can use CPaaS.
Just one final comment. I'm going to say what I'd like to see in UCaaS.
Okay.
The two things that I think we're going to see in the next year and a half that I've been waiting a number of years to see. The first is management tools using machine learning for availability. I don't want people to know my presence. I don't want people to know what device I'm on. I don't want to know where I am. What I want is them to understand my availability to them at that point in time. And availability requires presence, context, it requires your preferences, and it requires other information about you at that point in time. I think machine learning to solve that. So, and when you come to me and make a phone call with me, the phone doesn't ring. You actually get a response that says, hey, I know you're a salesman. I'm in a meeting with a customer. I don't want to talk to a salesman right now, so I'm unavailable to you, or I am available. So it becomes customized to the contextual individual who's trying to interact with you. I think we're going to see that in the next year to year and a half from someone. I think it will cause major changes in the industry. I think the second thing we're going to see with machine learning, and this is in the pure UC context, is using machine learning to provide information during a communications flow. I think you're going to see that come also in the next year. Cisco's announced some things in that space. So the idea of, we're in a conversation, we're working on a document, I've got a window that pops up interesting information or names of other people I might want to include in the communication. So it's actually providing me information to help me in the thought process. I think we'll see both of those over the next year to year and a half become things that are in the industry and available. So I suggest that those might be interesting areas to think about how machine learning can be applied, because it actually turns out what's interesting is you control the data set, right? So you actually have the data set on me and who calls me and what they are. You can actually structure that in terms of how you manage my preferences and my contextual availability, things like that. So I think that's an interesting area.
Absolutely. Very cool. Let's take a little step back. So we talked about the present, we talked about the future. Let's talk about the past. There's still, I read some crazy stat on the internet, so who knows if it's true, that there's about 23% of people are in the cloud now on their, their phone systems. The internet says 23%. They said it's heading towards there.
The internet says lots of things.
Yeah, it says a lot of things. And so I'd love to get your opinions on where do you see for an on-prem versus cloud solutions? Do you feel like where is the market right now? And why have the traditional bigger players who have all the on-prem, why have they not been able to get people into the cloud? And what are they trying to do that? And where can all the people here where's the opportunity for all the attendees here?
So very, very simply, numbers are somewhere around 45 million seats are cloud seats today. 450 to 550 million global seats, so it seems to be about 10%. If you look at the synergy data, look at all the data, that's why I said 20% I think is very high.
Okay.
The reality is, I think there are two factors, maybe three, that really drive people to not consider the cloud. The first is price. I mean, John, I think, can talk to this. He's done a number of analysis. If you do a straightforward analysis and you add up the TCO for a premise system, including the support costs and the maintenance costs, and you contrast that with an MRR offer at $25 to $30 a month, premise is always going to win on cost on TCO on a 5-year TCO. Always. And the reason is very simple. You're ignoring a critical factor of the cloud. What factor are you ignoring in that TCO analysis? No, total cost. You buy it. You buy a system, put it on the prem, pay maintenance and support. You buy a cloud offer at a month, and you compare those, and the cloud is going to be 20 or 30% higher. It's been pretty much true for the last 5 years. And the reason is nobody considers administrative costs, internal staff, employee costs. So if I've got a 1,000-person organization and I've got 3 people running it, and I can have 2 of them go do other things if I go to the cloud, and they're making $70,000 base salary, 45% burden, they're at $120,000 a year, times 2 is $240,000. $240,000 divided by 1,000 users is $240 a year. That's $20 a month to pay for those 2 administrative heads. If you don't take into account how administration changes, you can't change the underlying economics. Right now, most large organizations don't go to cloud because it's not cost effective for them in their analysis because they don't take that into account. I think the other side is there's a whole bunch of things that keep people on the premise, whether it's security, reliability, et cetera, and there's just a lot of I'll call it inertia there. So I think you have to change both of those.
So Phil is totally right. It's a big thing is the cost. The other thing is just status quo. You know, if it works, don't change it. So it's not that the cloud is competing with premise. It's that the cloud is competing with not doing anything. So it's just, you know, I've got something, it works. You know, even if it's an old Nortel system, whatever, it works. So customers don't want to make the move. I think if we look at, you know, small business versus large business, it's a lot easier for an SMB to move to the cloud. You know, they don't have to deal with all the, you know, migration of the prem. So we can't just look at it, you know, with a big swath. We really do have to look at it individually. I think the security issue has gone away. You know, like 5 years ago, the big thing was, oh, the cloud isn't as secure. I met with some banks last week at a conference, and they're all in on the cloud. And, you know, I asked, what about security? And they said, it's not a problem anymore. So yes, Google had an outage just 2 days ago. So, but I think for the most part, a lot of companies realize that the cloud is going to provide a high level of security. It provides the redundancy that's harder to get on-prem. So there are a lot of compelling reasons for companies to move to the cloud, and they're starting to really get it. But it's taking time. But a lot of the vendors feel, you know, so a lot of vendors are no longer really pushing their prem-based solution. They're pushing hybrid maybe, so that you can keep what you currently have, but when you get new things, it's going to be hybrid, and a lot of the applications are all going to be in the cloud. So like team collaboration, things like Slack, Microsoft Teams, all of those are in the cloud. You can't get an on-prem team collaboration type of solution. So what a lot of the vendors are doing is, you know, keep your core, you know, on-prem if you don't want to move, but the new stuff, you know, AI, you know, all these new things that are coming out, that's all going to be in the cloud layered on.
Just a few things on that. So first is, as we've heard, you know, if you're out there selling customers or prospects on cloud, and if they start talking about, oh, how much am I going to save, that's when you have to change the conversation, because if they're buying it on price, that's the wrong reason. Yes, the OpEx is more attractive than CapEx, and that makes it a go in a lot of cases. But you got to set realistic expectations about the, as Phil says, the long-term cost. But with that comes long-term benefits that you just don't get with staying on-prem. So related to that, there's probably an issue you're seeing out there, and that's kind of the generational thing, where a lot of IT folks, big or small organizations, if they've been in this role for 20, 30 years, and they're really tied to legacy technologies, it's going to be a little harder for them to embrace the cloud. And that's another point to address from the sales side, is say you need to show them how and why cloud, even if it's a hybrid approach where they go a little at a time, is actually a safer and smarter way, not just to make the business more effective, but also to, in a sense, to kind of preserve their role. Because if they hang on to legacy stuff for too long, their role is going to go away sooner or later. And there is definitely inertia from within IT circles. They don't want to take on new stuff that could be risky, that if they're getting close to their retirement window, they don't want to risk their legacy taking on technology they don't understand. So there's a role here to kind of simplify it and make it manageable for them, okay? The other thing with the cloud, too, is this idea that you get, we've heard this already, one of the things I think is really a strong point for your company is your data center infrastructure. Equinix, really top-tier data center relationships that you have, and all the right certifications up and down the line. That is the kind of confidence you can take to sell them, to say, hey, business continuity, disaster recovery. These things really matter for keeping businesses going and engaged with the right technologies. And you tell them you're not going to get this if you stick with Prem, and things are changing too quickly, and the marketplace is becoming obviously more globalized, not just for your customers, but also the way the business has to operate. So we already heard it today about moving to decentralized models. Cloud is by far the best way to manage that kind of seamlessly as you keep growing. You don't have to duplicate infrastructures. The redundancies are there. So there's a lot of good reasons to use a cloud-based model when it comes to growing a business and scaling it for today's marketplace.
Yeah, to follow up on that, it's all about flexibility. As John said, don't get into the cost discussion because that's not where you want to be. The cloud offers so much flexibility. You know, we've got all these new things coming all the time, and you know, who knows what it's going to be next year. So with the cloud infrastructure, you can adapt to that. With a Prem solution, it's just too hard, too costly. So for your customers to really be able to be forward thinking, they can't think Prem anymore. It's just, that ship has sailed.
All right. Kind of going along with this, we've noticed that CPaaS has been kind of dramatically evolving in the last couple of years. Twilio, Nexmo, they've really been educating the market on what CPaaS is. What's your viewpoint from an international standpoint? We notice that in the U.S., you know, great adoption, but sometimes when I talk to international companies, like very large carriers, they've never even heard of Twilio. So where do you guys see kind of the trends going and why?
So I actually did talk to Twilio the other day in anticipation of this question. So looking at their numbers, it looks like international is about 2 years behind domestically where we are. So the market numbers that they've got this year internationally are where we were 2 years ago domestically. So there is about a 2-year gap there. Some of the areas where there's more interest internationally is the UK, Germany, France, and Italy. So there's going to be a lot of activity there. Phil, you're...
Yeah, so all technologies have adoption curves, right? It starts in the US, it goes to English-speaking Europe and Australia next, UK, Germany, Norway, Scandinavia, because they all speak English. That's when we haven't written the manuals in other languages. Then it start written, and typically that happens 12 months after things, the curves, if you watch the adoption curves, there's a 12-month lag there. Then there's another 12-month lag to kind of the rest of the industrial world, and then another lag to the rest of the world. So it's like almost a 3 to 4 year kind of propagation. I think CPaaS is in that. I don't think there's any cultural reasons why CPaaS doesn't work. I think, though, there's the other thing with CPaaS that you guys need to really think about is there really are two very different kinds of CPaaS, and there are two very different implementations. So if you put CPaaS and you say, think about CPaaS as PSTN and as IP, and they're very different, right? PSTN CPaaS is mainly what Twilio has been selling to date. That's going to transition to more and more IP-based CPaaS when your phone is capable of doing things like VoLTE or doing it over IP. So I can actually just use IP services. The second big differentiation is whether or not an employee is involved. If you look at the majority of the Twilio deployments, they don't involve an employee. It's like an SMS message, you know, that kind of thing. The problem is when that SMS message now has a phone number to call to reschedule your appointment, now I'm involving an employee, and the employee system that gets involved in needs to integrate. And that's where you actually begin to see a lot more integration. So as you look at CPaaS, those things that are totally independent of employees, like if you think about the Uber CPaaS, it never touches an Uber employee. Who cares what system it's done on? It can be done on anything. On the other hand, if you need to integrate with employees, you need to do things that integrate with what they have. So that really, I think, kind of drives a CPaaS thought process of the kind of CPaaS application you want to focus on.
Absolutely. John?
I'm good.
All right, cool. So we're going to open up to the audience. Is there any questions? We have some of the brightest minds in the entire industry on the stage, excluding myself. So any questions for these wonderful people? Raise your hands. Anyone? Ask away. Cool, we have a question over there.
So for a smaller client, 5 to 10 users, is the price structure of administration something to bring up, actually? Because the amount of time for an on-prem solution that
I think absolutely. I mean, in terms of, somebody who goes out and look at a 10 seat, whatever small premise system you want.
Phil, could you repeat
Absolutely.
the question? For
So the
audience
question
out there?
was, is administration important to a 5 or 10 person organization? And I actually think in some ways it's maybe even more important because, if you look at any activity, there's kind of what I'll call fixed per activity effort you have to do, and then there's per user effort. And the fixed effort's the same whether you're deploying, if you're putting in a key system in your business, there's a set of effort that's the same regardless of whether you have 5 employees or 100 employees. Getting the system in place, connecting up the trunking, doing that, et cetera, that's going to be there regardless. And so I think you can make that argument. I would definitely make the argument and say, typically an organization spends this much time getting that system installed, and you can eliminate that. Absolutely. And I think it's got to become an important part of when you talk about total cost, including those total costs in. On the other hand, I think Patrick made a very good point, which is if you think about cloud, the way I like to think about it, has anybody ever read Timothy Chow? If you ever read Timothy Chow, go look up Timothy Chow, C-H-O-U. He wrote a book called The 7 Clear Models of Cloud Computing. It's kind of the Bible of how cloud business models work. If you read his books, what you'll realize is he argues that there's a fundamental change between the Model 3, which is open source, and Model 6, which is SaaS. And it's around basically repetition, standardization, and specialization. And his argument is that that's what creates cloud. It's actually the same exact thing that happened in the Industrial Revolution. If you think about it, 300 years ago, everything got manufactured locally. Your local blacksmith made everything. Then all of a sudden things were built in factories. That's the cloud. The problem is, in a lot of cases, we're selling to the blacksmith and telling him we're going to take his job away. So one of the things to consider in all of these is, are you talking to the right person? Because if I come in and say the great benefit of my system is it eliminates a job and saves money, if the guy I'm selling to is the guy who's going to lose his job, he's not really going to be excited. So I think one of the keys is understand who you're selling. A small organization, you got to sell to the owner, the guy who understands the profit value.
But I think it's also, you want to talk to them about the value that it provides. So the TCO is one thing, but it's also, by not having someone focused on monitoring a prem system, you can focus on what your company actually does and improving productivity and doing what you do best.
For a small outfit, I mean, they don't have anybody. They always call a vendor to come make a change on a North Star or something. So it's one way to bring up a conversation with the owner, like you said.
Right.
Cool. Any other questions? All right, it looks like people are getting excited for lunch. You guys, big round of applause. Thank you very much. And I believe Blair, Phil, and John will be here today, so if you want to ask them some side questions, they're very, very nice people, so just come on up to them. One last announcement, I believe lunch is down at the beach. Is that right, Jay? So if it's not at the beach, blame Jay. Otherwise, feel free to get up. And we are starting back up at 1:30. I saw a thumbs up back there from Darren, so 1:30.